Baroque is often thought of as a period of artistic style that used exaggerated motion and pure, easily interpreted details to produce drama, tension, exuberance, and grandeur in sculpture, painting, architecture, literature, dance, and music. The style began around 1600 in Rome, Italy, and spread to most of Europe. Peter Paul Rubens, born on June 28, 1577, was a prolific 17th-century Flemish Baroque painter and a proponent of an exuberant Baroque style that emphasized movement, color, and sensuality. He is well known for his Counter-Reformation altarpieces, portraits, landscapes, and history paintings of mythological and liturgical subjects. Saint George and the Dragon. The most famous legend of Saint George is of him slaying a dragon. In the Middle Ages, the dragon was commonly used to represent the devil. The slaying of the dragon by Saint George was first credited to him in the 12th century, long after his death. Christ Risen. It shows Christ just after he has risen from the grave. The resurrection has often been depicted in art. Contrary to most paintings on the subject, here the skull and the snake are missing. They are the symbols of death and sin that Christ has overcome. To the left, two angels intend to put some sort of crown on Jesus' head. Another angel lifts the shroud. Christ on the Cross. It's said to be one of Rubens' best emotional religious masterpieces. The raising of the cross allows the viewers to see their Savior at a moment that is both deeply human and unmistakably divine. The raising of the cross makes use of classical Baroque techniques to emphasize greater spiritual truths. The viewer can immediately pick out the strong contrast of the light and dark, as well as the tangled oblique knot of corded flesh that struggles to lift the Savior to his death. The Judgment of Paris. Paris was the son of King Priam of Troy. It was prophesied that he would bring ruin to the city, and so he was abandoned. But shepherds rescued him. Paris had to decide which of the three goddesses was the most beautiful, Venus, Juno, or Minerva. He chose Venus and awarded her a golden apple. The jealousy and indignation of the others precipitated the Trojan War. Rembrandt van Rijn. Known for his self-portraits and biblical scenes, Dutch artist Rembrandt is considered to be one of the greatest painters in European history. Rembrandt was a 17th century painter and etcher whose work came to dominate what has been named the Dutch Golden Age. One of the most revered artists of all time, Rembrandt's greatest creative triumphs are seen in his portraits, of his contemporaries' illustrations of biblical scenes and self-portraits, as well as his innovative etchings and use of shadow and light. The Night Watch. It is a group portrait of a militia company commissioned and paid for by the members concerned and was intended for the great room of the Musketeer Assembly Hall. Belshazzar's Feast. In the story of Belshazzar's Feast, the Jews are in exile in Babylon. After a feast in which Belshazzar, the Babylonian king, commits a sacrilege using the Jews' sacred vessels to praise the heathen god, he is miraculously killed. The kingdom falls, and the Jews regain their freedom. Self-Portrait of Rembrandt in 1669. This work was painted in the final year of Rembrandt's life and is one of his last pictures. He died on 4th of October in 1669 and was buried in the Western Kirk in Amsterdam. Rembrandt painted more self-portraits than any other in 7th century. The Blinding of Samson. Rembrandt's most gruesome and violent work. Bloody story of Samson being overwhelmed by one of the Philistines, who was the biblical hero locked in his grip. Samson's right hand is being feathered by another soldier, and a third is plunging a sword into his eye, from which blood rushes forth. His whole frame rises convulsively with sudden pain. The warrior standing in front, silhouetted against the light in a hunter's manner, has his hand ready to plunge into Samson if he managed to free himself before the hideous deed is done. Delilah, with a look of terror mixed with triumph, is a masterful characterization seen in a half haze, as she rushes to the opening of the tent. philosopher in meditation. This is basically Tobit and Anna waiting for the return of their son, Tobias, from the Old Testament book of Tobit. The anatomy lesson of Dr. Tob. Dr. Nicholas is featured explaining musculature of the arm to medical professional. As you can see, one person is missing in the picture, and that person is the preparator. It's said to be the important person that should be put in the picture. The name of the patient is Aaron Skidd, convicted with arms robbery and sentenced to death by hanging. The Three Crosses. The Three Crosses is an etching and dry point painting which depicts the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. It is considered one of the most dynamic prints ever made. The main subject in the etching is Jesus Christ, on the cross, flanked by two thieves who were crucified with him. The etching depicts the Virgin Mary, mother of Jesus, weeping and supported by the evangelist, Roman soldiers on horseback along the grieving citizens surrounding the crosses. A beam of light representing God's light from heaven pierces the darkened sky to envelop the crucified figure of Christ. Frans Hals, a Dutch Golden Age painter especially famous for portraiture. He is notable for his loose painterly brushwork and helped introduce this lively style of painting into Dutch art. Hals was also instrumental in the evolution of 17th century group portraiture. Young man with a jug of beer. The picture is basically a two laughing boys with mug of beer. It's said to be someone looking into a mug refers to an old Dutch word for a glutton or greedy for more. Young man with a skull. His painting shows a young man in a feather bonnet gesturing and holding a skull. His head is slightly inclined to the right, same as the skull looks in the same direction. His right hand, much foreshortened, is stretched out to the front. In his hands, he holds a skull. He has a long, unkempt hair and wears a red cap with a long plume hanging down on the right. His bleak cloak fastened across his breast. A piece of white collar and of the lower opening of the sleeve are also visible, with a light gray background. The Laughing Cavalier, one of the most brilliant of all Baroque portraits. The unknown subject is in fact not laughing, but can be said to have an enigmatic smile, much amplified by his upturned mustaches. Johannes Vermeer, a Dutch painter who specialized in domestic interior scenes of middle-class life. Vermeer was a moderately successful provincial genre painter in his lifetime. He seems never to have been particularly wealthy, leaving his wife and children in debt at his death, perhaps because he produced relatively few paintings. The Girl with the Pearl Earring. He uses a pearl earring for a focal point here. The image is a thorny that Dutch 17th century description of a head that was not meant to be a portrait. The Milkmaid. The Milkmaid is an oil canvas painting of a milkmaid. It has been suggested plausibly that Vermeer's kitchen's maid is making bread porridge, which puts stale bread. There is an unusual amount of bread on the table, to good use by combining it with milk and a few other ingredients to make a filling mash or meal. The Allegory of Painting, an oil canvas painting in 17th century. The painting depicts an artist painting a female subject in his studio, by a window with a large map of the Low Countries on the wall behind. Vermeer signed the painting on the map, behind the model's neck, but did not date it. Nicolas Poussin was the leading painter of the classical French Baroque style, although he spent most of his work life in Rome. His work is characterized by clarity, logic, and order, and favors line over color. The Holy Family. It's a picture of Virgin Mary sits in the center, but the action focuses on embrace shared by Jesus Christ and John the Baptist. To the left, Saint Elizabeth gazes steadily at Mary, perhaps foreseeing her future suffering. Saint Joseph leans against a wall and smiles approvingly at the scene below. Infants pay homage by bringing gifts to Jesus. Arcadian Shepherds is without a doubt the most famous and most widely discussed of any posing painting. This image depicts three shepherds and monumental statue-like women grouped around a large stone tomb. The idyllic natural setting, the antique robes and sandals of the figures, and of course, the painting's titles all situate this mythical realm of Arcadia. Georges de la Tour was a Baroque painter who spent most of his working life in Duchy of Lorraine. He painted most religious chiaroscuro scenes lit by candlelight. Mary Magdalene with Smoking Flame. It was done in the year 1640 using oil paint on canvas. The contrast in this painting is used to draw one's attention to the center of the photo, where the light is illuminating the objects around it. The skin, books and skeleton etc. are smooth. It is very realistic. The Newborn Christ. It is a picture of Virgin Mary and the newborn Jesus together with Saint Anne. It's said to be an ambiguous painting because it has one or more meanings. It could be a two-lady with an infant, or Virgin Mary or newborn Christ together with Saint Anne. The Dice Players. A picture of a young soldier's gamble watched over by two figures. On the left is an older man smoking a pipe, and on the far right a young androgynous face also looks on. Their still faces all warmly lit by candlelight convey perhaps anticipation at how the game will unfold. Candlelight dramatically radiates out from the center of the composition, highlighting the main expressive features of the characters, their faces and hands. Typically, the candle itself is hidden, masked by one of the soldier's arms. Saint Joseph in 1642, also known as Joseph the Carpenter. The older figure is a bearded man, hard at his work, and with him his son who dutifully holds a candle so the father can work well into the night. The boy seems to be saying something very important, and the man pauses and listens. The boy said to be the little Jesus.